Have you ever thought about how coffee goes from beans to your cup? Imagine those small coffee beans turning into your morning wake-up call. If you haven't thought about this magical process before, get ready, because we're delving into the interesting process that brings coffee to your mug. Step 1. Cultivation. Coffee beans are seeds that grow in a region known as the bean belt, which stretches between the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, a tropical zone. This belt spans over 50 countries, including places like Hawaii, Mexico, and Puerto Rico in North America, and the Caribbean, Guatemala and Costa Rica in Central America, Colombia and Brazil in South America, Ethiopia and Kenya in East Africa, Ivory Coast in West Africa, Yemen on the Arabian Peninsula, and Indonesia and Vietnam in Asia. The journey of a coffee seed begins in a nursery, where it is planted in large, shaded beds. With lots of care, water, and protection from the harsh sun, these small plants are nurtured until they are strong enough to be permanently planted during the wet season, typically reaching about 18 to 24 inches in height by then. You see, most coffee produced comes from two main varieties, Coffea arabica and Coffea robusta. Around 70% of the world's coffee is arabica, known for its high quality, mild taste, and light, airy complexion with an intense aroma. Arabica coffee typically grows in higher elevations and requires a lot of care. Most gourmet coffees are made from these high-quality Arabica beans. On the other hand, Robusta coffee, mainly grown in Vietnam as well as India, Africa, and Brazil, is easier to care for and yields more crops, making it cheaper to produce. It has a more bitter, full-bodied taste with a distinctive earthy flavor, often used in espresso blends. Coffee plants start as tropical evergreen shrubs and, after about 4 years of careful pruning and tending, they mature into coffee trees, ready to produce fruit. During the rainy season, these trees bloom with delicate white flowers that smell a bit like jasmine. After the brief flowering period, it takes about 7 to 9 months for Arabica beans, or up to 11 months for Robusta beans to bear fruit. Initially green, the fruit ripens into a deep red, shiny cherry known as the coffee cherry. Inside these cherries are usually two seeds, which we know as green coffee beans. 2. Harvesting. In most countries, coffee crops are harvested by hand, which is both labor-intensive and slow. There are two main methods for picking the coffee cherries. One way is strip picking, where all the cherries are stripped off the branch at once. This can be done by hand or with the help of a machine. The other method is selective picking, where cherries are picked individually by hand, choosing only those that are perfectly ripe. Pickers usually wear a basket around their waist and empty it into a larger bag as they go. Harvesting is done in cycles, with pickers returning to the same trees multiple times until all the coffee cherries are collected. This method is expensive and is mainly used for harvesting high-quality Arabica beans. On average, a coffee picker can gather about 100 to 200 pounds of coffee cherries per day, which results in approximately 20 to 40 pounds of coffee beans. Step 3. Processing. Once the coffee cherries are picked, they need to be processed quickly to prevent spoilage. There are two main ways to do this. The dry method is an old technique used in countries where water is scarce. It's simple but requires a lot of labor. The cherries are spread out on large surfaces to dry under the sun. They're turned regularly to prevent spoiling and covered at night to protect them from rain and moisture. This manual process can take several weeks until the cherry's moisture content drops to about 11%. By the end of this drying phase, the outer cover turns black. The wet method is quite different. Freshly harvested cherries go through a pulping machine that separates the pulp and skin from the beans. The beans then move through water channels where they're sorted by weight. Heavier beans sink, while lighter ones float. Next, the beans are soaked in large fermentation tanks filled with water for 12 to 48 hours. This soaking process dissolves the mucilage layer, leaving just the beans, which now feel rough to the touch. After soaking, the beans are ready for drying. They can be dried in the sun by spreading them out and turning them regularly, or by using large tumblers. Either way, they must be dried to about 11% moisture. At this stage, they're called parchment coffee and are stored in jute or sisal bags until they're ready for export. They're kept in a dark, well-ventilated area away from moisture. Next up is the milling process, where the skin is removed from the parchment coffee beans. This involves two steps: hulling and polishing. Hulling uses a machine called a huller to carefully remove the dried husk without damaging the beans. Polishing is optional and removes any remaining silver skin, making the beans shiny. This step doesn't affect the taste, though. At this point, the coffee beans are light brown and are referred to as green coffee. Confusing, right? But that's what they call it. Step 4. Grading. Before the beans are ready for roasting, there's an essential step known as grading, which is where some real coffee magic happens. This is done by professionals known as tasters or cuppers, who play a crucial role in the coffee-making process. These cuppers work in specially designed rooms dedicated solely to the art of cupping. This process involves tasting and evaluating the coffee based on its visual, taste, and aromatic qualities. A seasoned cupper can taste hundreds of samples in a single day and still identify the subtle differences between each one. It's quite impressive. You might be wondering how this is achieved, especially since we're still dealing with green coffee beans. Well, here's how it works. A cupper begins by assessing the beans for their overall visual quality. Next, the beans are roasted in a small laboratory roaster, immediately ground, and then infused with boiling water at just the right temperature. The cupper then noses the brewed coffee, taking in its aroma. After letting the coffee rest for a few minutes, they break the crust, the layer of grounds that form at the top, and nose it again. The tasting itself is quite unique. The cupper quickly slurps a spoonful of coffee, allowing it to coat their tongue before spitting it out. This meticulous process ensures that only the finest beans make it to the roasting stage, contributing to the high quality of the final product. Once the green coffee beans are bagged up, they're either loaded into shipping containers or bulk shipped inside plastic-lined containers. There are various methods and factors in the distribution process, but to keep it simple, the green coffee beans are exported from their country of origin and imported to countries that are buying them. From there, they're sold in smaller batches to different sellers and distributors until they finally reach local coffee roasters. Step 5. Roasting. Then comes the roasting. This is the part where the green beans turn into the beautiful brown beans we're all familiar with. Most roasting machines keep the temperature around 400 degrees Fahrenheit. During this roasting process, the beans turn brown and release a fragrant oil called caffeol. This stage is known as pyrolysis, where the beans develop the flavor and aroma that makes our coffee so delicious. While roasting at these high temperatures, the oils and lipids in the coffee beans move from the center to just below the surface. Most commercial roasting happens on a large scale, but if you visit your local coffee shop, you might see small-scale, single-origin roasts happening right there. Next up is packaging. Because roasted coffee beans can easily be spoiled by air or moisture, they need to be packaged quickly and properly. The beans are placed in airtight bags made of opaque material to protect them from UV rays. These bags also have a one-way valve that allows carbon dioxide to escape without letting oxygen in, keeping the beans fresh. Step 6. Brewing. After the roasting process, coffee beans undergo several critical steps before they're ready for brewing. The first step is cooling. Roasted beans are rapidly cooled to halt the roasting process and stabilize their flavor. This cooling process is crucial as it prevents the beans from overcooking and ensures they retain their intended flavors and aromas. Next, the beans undergo grinding, a process where they're broken down into smaller particles suitable for brewing. The grind size varies depending on the brewing method, finer for espresso machines and coarser for methods like French press. The consistency of the grind is essential for extracting the right flavors during brewing. Following grinding, the coffee is brewed by steeping or percolating the ground beans in hot water. This step extracts the soluble compounds from the beans, resulting in the flavorful coffee beverage we enjoy. The brewing process can be as simple as pouring hot water over grounds in a drip brewer, or as precise as controlling temperature and pressure in an espresso machine. Once brewed, the coffee is typically filtered to separate the grounds from the liquid. Filtering ensures a smooth, sediment-free cup of coffee. Some methods, like the French press, do not use a filter, allowing the grounds to settle at the bottom. The final stage is optional, depending on the desired end product, flavoring, and additives. Some consumers prefer their coffee black, while others may add milk, sugar, or flavor syrups to customize their beverage. This stage allows for personalization according to taste preferences. From cultivation to brewing and beyond, each step in the coffee-making process contributes to the final flavor profile of that coffee that gets to your mug.